Oh, hey. I hope you all are having a fantastic day. Pardon me sounding a little bit like tired, because I am. I'm old, not old, but I got bad sleeping habits. I be up all night. My bad. I be up all night. I be thinking like crazy. Not in like a panicky kind of way, but just overall, I be having like a lot of stuff on my mind that I want to do. And I got up today with intent to kind of push out this video because I actually wanted to do it before the trial got started so that I could put some stank on it or put some emphasis on my predictions about what's going to happen. So needless to say, this is about Milagro and Megan and them being at this point of talking about this defamation case and really like ironing out what's going to happen, what's not going to happen, and so on and so forth, right? There are plenty of people that have gone over the charges and what's being presented. Oh my goodness, I'm very sorry. First of all, thank you to each and every one of you that have checked out my previous work and you guys are enjoying it. The views, the likes, the comments, per usual, the subscribers. It's so good to have you here. I'm so grateful that you are enjoying the content. And hopefully, again, I could just keep my foot on the gas. We coming to the end of the semester, so I'm feeling really good about it. I'm super stoked about it, actually. And I actually got to pick my next set of classes and all of those things, but enough of that stuff. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I appreciate you. And I hope this is the kind of palate cleanse that you're looking for. But let's get into this Megan and Milagro thing. So, as y'all know, I'm not a lawyer by any means. I'm not giving out any legal advice. But, I expressed to y'all that I do psychology. HR is my background, and I did my SHRM certification and all that other stuff. So I got a little bit of knowledge about like things like employment law. So just in the space of having that experience and what I've done in the past, what I've seen in the past, how I've learned to interpret law in that space, I'm integrating into this space and talking about it, and we just talking smack. So again, by no means am I giving you legal advice or telling you that I got this right. I'm just establishing or having a conversation with y'all about what I think is happening and what to expect moving forward, right? So, um, we're about at the halfway point. From what I'm seeing, I'm following Megan Cuniff because I really appreciate the fact that she's actually there. And I think that as a journalist, she has been really good at being impartial, right? And she also goes back and acknowledges when she might have misinterpreted something or where she saw that there was a mistake in the prosecution or in the defendant. Like she goes back and she goes over all of her points and pieces. So I think that that's fantastic, right? So somebody that I feel like has a relatively well established understanding of what's going on and is paying attention to the nuance of the trial, like the individual experience that's happening to, say, Megan, how Milagro handles herself and that sort of thing. So we're going to probably touch a little bit on that psychology thing, just a bit, but I really want to get into the weeds of what we're seeing here and why I think this is so interesting. So, based on what I'm seeing, and based on the depositions that have come out, it looks like Milagros' team is relying on that plausible deniability, naivete kind of thing, right? Like, oh, I just didn't know. And, you know, I think that an important part to understand and acknowledge with the pursuit and the sticking of these charges is the establishment or the proof of intent. And so what happens is that proving someone's intention can get it complicated when you're talking about things like defamation. And what I compare this to, as far as I'm concerned, right, like, or my experience aligns with this idea of, say, a discrimination case, right? Like, so when we have discrimination cases, it's not often that you're going to have somebody like outwardly call somebody a derogatory term. It's not often that you have an employee that's just like, yeah, I'm firing you because you're pregnant. It's usually an implication, right? It's usually a series of actions and behaviors and emails and so on that leads to your ultimate demise. And it is implied that it's based on something that is a protected class under employment law, right? So I'll give you a quick example. Like, I worked at a place and someone that I worked closely with was pregnant. And this was right around the pandemic. Short version of it is she's like, yo, I just found out. I'm trying to do this. I'm trying to do that. And I'm like, yo, just tell the people because, you should be able to go and get assistance and all this other stuff. Long story complicated. Yo, she told them she was expecting. I think she was fired maybe like a week later, quite literally, right? And she filed the case and she won. right? Because again, it's not that they ever said that we're firing you because you're pregnant. As a matter of fact, they really tried to make the argument that it wasn't because of that. But the implication is that you have experienced this hardship because at the heels of you saying this statement to them, you then have this adverse action taken against you. So there's no expectation of mine that Milagro is ever going to get on the stand and just be like, yeah, by the way, like I hate this and I did all of this stuff and blah, blah, blah. Like, I don't think that that's going to be the game. But what I think she's trying to do is portray herself in a certain way, again, in this space of naivete, because that's the best that her team could do, which is why they were trying to shift from defamation per se to defamation something else. And essentially it was like you have to prove that what she said, because that was the shift. When it's defamation per se, the idea is that all you have to do is defame somebody. You just have to say something bad about them, and that's that. But if you get the other version of defamation that I can't think of right now, it requires that you attach the statements of that person and how it directly impacted your losses, right? So instead of that implied notion that happens in defamation per se, they want direct relationship. They want you to be able to point from 1 to 2 to say that this is the reason and this is how, which was a pretty good tactic on Mill's lawyer's side, but the judge wasn't having it. Because it's like, yeah, we're not doing all of this semantic stuff. We're not playing this game because what you're trying to do is create more nuance. So pay attention to this notion of creating enough confusion in the space to try to hide Milagro behind like the cloud of maybe they won't see me, right? Kind of stuff. So further, you have Milagro presented herself a certain sort of way, right? So she's talking to the jury and everything else. And she went through this whole thing with Jasmine Sullivan. As a matter of Jasmine Sullivan, Lord, get it together. With O'Sullivan, which is Megan's lawyer. And Megan Cuniff actually reported that she's not sure how well it's going for O'Sullivan based on the fact that it's just giving Milagro the opportunity to tell her story.
Started testifying yesterday, and she's still on the stand today. She answered questions all this morning from John O'Sullivan, Megan's lawyer. She'll be back at 1:30 after lunch, and I think she could be on the stand all day. And I'm not sure how well it's going for John O'Sullivan in that he seems to want Milagro to just admit that she knew that Tori shot Meg. But Milagro's never going to do that, and she's not doing that now. It's just kind of giving her an opportunity to talk and tell her story about why she believed this, why she believed that. So it's really been going on for a long time.
My perception of what that lawyer or what Megan's lawyer is actually doing is giving her rope. Because what happens is that when she sits on the stand and she starts to talk about herself in a certain sort of way and she tries to remove herself from responsibility, that conversation about who she is and she's not this person that's malicious, it's going to be hard to prove that untrue once they start to push out the evidence and show, say, the station heads and the IG post and all of the different things, right? Because the evidence is going to show a different version of her. And the reason that I think that that is very, very tricky is because once the jurors see her in that pendulum, she runs the risk of them not believing her at all and them simply not liking her. And in this kind of case where you are proving character, that is costly. But again, that's just, my hunch on it. I think that that's a risk and that's not a good idea. And not to mention that, going into this space and suggesting that Meg's tears are invalid and that listening to Milagro curse is not a representation of the facts. I'm like, but that's the nature of this case. So to ask the jurors to dismiss that or act like it's not important, I don't know if that's the right approach, because to me, that is minimizing, which is an extension of perpetual abuse, like that post-separation abuse that we were talking about previously, right? This is already the problem that Megan is having. So to make that your strategy, I don't know if that angle is a great angle in the long run. In the beginning, we've seen this happen before. In the beginning, it looks like the right strategy, but over time, it kind of gets complicated, right? So the other part of this conversation that's important, this was also Tory's opportunity to, protect Black women, as he told Jason Lee. And we're going to get into that a little bit later too. If he would have had the conversation or deposed in his deposition, spoke to the fact that, yeah, nah, like I told Milagro that I didn't do it. And this is what makes it worse. Because if he were to admit that he told Milagro that he didn't do it, Milagro's passion would probably leave room for grace. Because then at that point, it's like, oh no, she did all of this because she genuinely believed that he didn't do it. But the fact that all of these people have been deposed, all of them have corroborated that they've worked together, talked to each other, done business, and so on and so forth. But none of them, not Aiden, not Livingston, not Milagro, not Tory, not a single one of them have confirmation or a statement from Tory saying, no, Tory told me he didn't do it. None of them are corroborating that. And this is where it gets particularly problematic because it becomes that deflection technique. And again, this is the perpetuation of abuse that I think can be a stain for Milagro, to say the least. So with that being said, Milagro's tactic to kind of talk in circles, because there was a mention that the jurors were confused and they didn't know the relationship between Tory and this one and that one. Like they didn't understand the names and it was a lot of information and so on and so forth.
I am not sure how much the jury is really following this stuff. It's just a bunch of people they've never met, and it really gets in the weeds on all this social media banter. And one juror actually asked this morning if they could get clarity on who these people are, who their relationships are. This juror was confused about who Tony Lanes was, and Daystar is Tony. They were confused about who Kelsey is, who the dad is, and they didn't get an answer in public court, but the judge reminded the attorneys of this before they broke for lunch. Just said, hey, remember, the jury is a little confused here. So we'll see how this keeps going, but right now the trial is already looking like it's going to be way too long. It should be over this Friday, and they're saying it might not be over until next Wednesday.
Again, I think that that's a part of Meg's team's strategy, because on the surface, it's supposed to be confusing. Because the bystanders, right? Like even if you look at social media, most people never made the connection that all of these people was working together. It genuinely looked like a bunch of people that had a single one standing opinion and they all just happened to agree. That is on purpose. That is intentional. As an effective smear campaign goes unnoticed. And this is the part that gets really interesting. So as the lawyers step further into the trial and they start to clear things up, and once the jurors come to those paces of like, wait a minute, so they were cool and they were talking and that was, when that starts to unpack, that's problematic. I hope y'all don't hate my stomach growling. That's crazy. So I am looking forward to seeing what happens here, right? Because again, this idea that you can use reasonable doubt or plausible deniability in every single case, right? Because Tory, Livingston, Aiden, Mill, they all use the same exact strategy. But the problem is, one, when y'all work together, you can overwhelm. This is literally like they were jumping Meg, and now she getting a one-on-one and everybody got an attitude. I love to see the switch. I love to see the switch of the narrative of, oh, she's just using her money and she just bullying and she just this, she just that. And I'm like, yeah, a couple weeks ago, y'all was talking about her hate is justified. Y'all was talking about when she made the claim about like botting, right? And that kind of BS. Everybody was like, oh, people just hate you in real life. What happened? What happened? Oh, she must be paying the judges. So now there's this shift in the narrative again, right? And again, one of the things that I struggle with the most is the need to be right. Not personally. I'm a person that I try my best to be open to the fact that I could get something wrong, because I know the more you learn, the more you recognize you can get wrong. And so the part that Tory, Livingston, Aiden, Milagro, what they missed is that their arrogance and their self-righteousness is what told on them, is what made their intentionality transparent to everybody else, or at least to the majority. Because of course, you know, the fans that come online because they're looking for validation, they're not coming here to form or discuss an opinion in variability.